The moderator of the panel is a good friend of us, is Tobias. Come on. Tobias is owner and managing director of The Place, a really cool co-working space directly in the center of our beautiful city. And he's a pretty active angel investor. But let's start with The Place. What is The Place?
The Place is an innovation hub that's focusing only on startups. So we have two business lines, and the one is co-working. We've got 120 seats, solely reserved for startups. And the second is events, from regular startup meetups, product launch parties to big corporate innovation workshops. We do roughly like 300 events each year. And we have the most important thing, we have our own cafe and bar to actually network and hang out and meet other interesting founders.
That's cool. Own bar. We need to also own bar. That's
the dream of every guy.
Yeah, right. Your own company with their own bar. That's great. And you're an active business angel, right?
Yes, I have roughly 20 investments, so very small ones, very early stage ones. And then in later stages, you encounter in series A, B, C, encounter great guys like you. And this is also how we met. So there's 20 investments, 3 of them exited pretty successfully, and others also doing an amazing job in growing the business, yes.
Means you are also operational and you're supporting your startups. This is the topic of your panel, right? Tooltime, operational VCs. That's your panel and that's your audience.
Right, thank you. I want to welcome you all to the panel Tooltime. It's about the guys that get their hands dirty and that enjoy getting their hands dirty every day, all day long, 24/7. And they think by getting their hands dirty, they increase the value of the startups, they increase the speed, and then create a great financial and content outcome for the investors and also for themselves. So please join me to welcome my distinguished panelists, Anton Waitz from Project A, Eckhardt Weber, Hitfox, Christian Schröder, formerly Global Founders Capital, and last but definitely not least, Henri Kühner from Building 10. Thank you.
Yeah.
And as everybody knows, I'm incredibly lazy, so I did not prepare my introduction of the panelists because they can do it themselves much better. So maybe Eckhardt, you want to start basically what is Hitfox doing? What's your view on operational VC? Why do you do it a certain way? Please keep it short.
Of course. Yeah, thank you very much. Hi, my name is Eckhardt. I'm one of the partners of Hitfox, and what is Hitfox actually doing? And I'm actually mostly focused on one of their topics at the moment. They are a very operational VC, or some also still call them company builders, but they rather see themselves now as a startup platform, which actually encourages entrepreneurs to build up their own startups and companies. And what they have done is actually they have taken the company building aspect of Startup Foundation one step further and now actually do it in industries. So the last 4 years they have been behind Finleap, which is a fintech company builder, and just on the industry of fintech and insurtech have supported the build-up of startups. And now just last year we started the same idea and methodology in digital health, and we started Heartbeat Labs, and they are now with a very, again, industry-focused platform. We support entrepreneurs and develop with them together ideas and start new companies.
Thank you. Anton.
Yeah, I'm Anton. I'm a general partner at Project A. Project A is not a company builder, not an incubator. Project A is a venture capital firm with 260 million under management, and we invest in startups in a very early stage, in a seed and a Series A stage. So normally we write the first ticket, as we call it. The first investments are between 1 and 5 million. And we invest all over Europe, and we only invest in founder-led teams. So we wouldn't kind of co-found or what you do or build a company anymore. We used to do that, but we don't do that anymore. But we are an operational VC in the sense that we have the typical investment team of 10, 15 people, including investor relations, finance, and so on and so forth. But then we also have 90 operational experts on our payroll that work under our roof and that work or provide their services exclusively to the companies that we invest in. So we are basically not a company builder, but a venture capital firm that provides a lot of support to the companies that we invest in. That's the difference.
Yeah. Thank you. Christian.
Hi, I'm Christian. So I have always been very entrepreneurial. Started my first company when I was 16, and for the past 5 years I worked with Rocket Internet as a founder and investor. And very recently I decided to start my own venture studio, where I now will build together with entrepreneurs 2 to 3 companies a year. And yeah, I will add value to those companies by working very operationally with the founders on the day-to-day issues to make those companies more successful.
Thank you, Henri.
Yeah, I'm Henri. I'm one of the partners and also one of the founders of B10. B10 is a small venture capital firm investing own money in startups, typically seed and pre-seed stage, so the very first investment is typically ours. I started my first company when I was 30, but at this time I was super unexperienced. I would have needed a person like me today. And we try to be this person for startups maybe like you, to support them and help them to grow their companies.
Right, thank you for the intro. How would you define operational VC? There's like 4 different versions, which you hinted at it. And then I think big part of that panel is also to get an understanding of what the different areas are, what the startups can expect from you guys if they work together with you. Maybe starting with the one very specific way. Christian, you have a very special idea how you want to support startups and how many you want to do.
Exactly. So what I do is basically I always talk to people about starting new businesses, business idea, different stakeholders like founders or VCs. And basically what that does is giving me a repository of generally good vetted business ideas. And then I think the second aspect is to work with founders who want to start a company but don't yet clearly know what kind of company they want to start exactly. But ideally they should know a general field, like I want to start something in blockchain or I want to start something in fintech. And then I would go into an ideation phase with those founders, look at different business models and find the ideal business model we could build together. And simultaneously, I already talked to investors to make sure that we can finance the company. So I think my approach to company building it's more like a co-creation approach, that I work with one or a few good entrepreneurs on finding the right idea and then building the company on top of that.
But you're not planning to build up your own staff that's basically on your payroll?
No. So I think the capabilities should be built within the venture so that the growth doesn't stop once you cut off the company, it becomes independent. So I rather believe like the experts which are specifically needed for that company, it could be more like online marketing people or product people, they should be hired within the company.
Anton, do you agree with that? You got 90 people on your payroll. What services do they provide to the young startups?
It's a broad range. It's basically, it goes from business intelligence, online marketing, to we have 20 developers that provide help on the IT and product side. We have 10 communication people, we have recruiters, we have salespeople. So it's like the whole spectrum. And that the whole spectrum of services that companies in these early stages normally demand. And so I think that the difference is, as I just said, to what you guys are doing, is that we basically don't sit down in the ideation phase, but that we meet the founders when they have already started the company, when they've already have some traction, and then we kind of provide these services fully on demand. We wouldn't kind of force or push anyone to take these services. It's like we always compare it with a menu in a restaurant, where you basically pick your services as you like it, and it's not one of these French cuisine restaurants where you only have three or four dishes on it, but it's like one of these Chinese restaurants where you have hundreds of meals and dishes or services on it, and that is working out pretty well actually. That the founders come to us, get the services, get the support they need on demand. So it's more like a extra capacity that we can provide them with.
Okay, Henri, how do you don't have 90 people on the payroll, but some. How do you overcome the topic that basically the startups might be addicted to these external services and lack the independence that they need to be hugely successful?
When we started B10, we talked to most of your companies before. So we talked to Rocket, Project A, and the other companies, and asked them 2 questions: what goes well and what does not go so well. And we tried to keep the good things and leave the difficult things away. Of course, that didn't work out completely, but we tried it. And one thing is, we didn't want to put so many people on our payroll because we believed that sooner or later the startups had to pay for them to some extent. So we have 9 people on our payroll only, but we have, of course, also much less investments than, for example, Project A has. Yeah? And also we invest less money than they do. So we have 6 investments to date, and you have, I don't know, over 20 or 30 most likely investments. But we believe that with a small amount of people, you can have a high impact, but only if you only focus on very few investments. And same like you guys, we also believe not in the fact that we should bring the idea. We think that you know it best, and we are only the supporting act in the show.
Again, how do you make sure that the startups don't get dependent on that nutrition?
So the 9 people, each person only has, let's say, 1 basic skill, 1 person for finance, 1 for recruiting, 1 for fundraising, and so on. And this person is only there for a certain time period. And once the startup grows, they have to hire own people there. So we don't want to make them dependent on us. And this 1 person then works, of course, for all the 6 currently portfolio companies, which means that the more the startups grow, the more they develop their own skills. And that's also on purpose.
Thank you. Eckhardt, Hitfox Group has a special approach to the operational support because you work in specific industries, namely healthcare and fintech. Why do they need special support in these industries?
Actually, I answer that in a second. I would like to maybe frame the whole idea how we do it a little bit differently, because I think it's not like we're not their mentors and we are not their coaches. I think we'd rather see ourselves, when we start a company with entrepreneurs, we see us as the 3rd or 2nd or 4th entrepreneur co-founder with those other people. We are very experienced and we have a lot of different faces because we have experts for marketing, like similar to Project A. So I would not say that we are basically someone like educating someone, but we're going together. And then why do we think it's helpful and it's necessary in especially fintech and in healthcare? Because those are both very, very highly regulated and complex industries. And often for a single startup, it's very, very hard in those areas to survive. And I think with our background, which can be support in special areas, regulation, or even providing some funding, because it just takes longer than you expected, I think is very helpful. And that's why we just directly go into those industries.
So the regulation is the enabler for your business model, basically.
It's definitely part of the enabler, and I think if we look back at other, industries in the digital age, there were other enablers needed. But I think nowadays, especially still in fintech, insurtech, and as in healthcare, it's very important to have some like experienced serial entrepreneur background with you to actually at least minimize the risks involved with building up startups.
Okay. I think all of you kind of mentioned. Like how closely do we work with the entrepreneur in the ideation phase or not, or do I want to have a founded team or not? How has that changed over years? Because you, Anton, you mentioned that you changed your business model a little bit in that aspect. Well, I think you guys still also create ideas. How is it changing, and why do you? What's changing in the ecosystem that made you adapt your business model to it? Maybe Henri, you want to start.
So first of all, at the beginning we thought, hey, maybe we also build some companies ourselves too. But then we soon figured out after a few months that this is not a good idea because we are not the experts in the idea. We could read things and talk to people about things, but ultimately the founder knows their topic best, that's for sure. So that's why very soon we skipped the idea of building own business, so no own ideation, that's what the founders are doing. And that's due to the fact that we believe that founders should be in the driver's seat of the company. So there are some companies which are not on stage today, which are looking rather for execution-only founders. But the topics we are doing are a little bit more complex, very often tech-driven. And pure execution is very often not enough in deep tech companies. So that's why we believe we need to leave the founders in the driver's seat, and they have to do it themselves in the whole idea. We help them to overcome certain obstacles that they don't know because they might not have the experience yet.
Okay, Christian, you very intensively work with the founders, or plan to work with the founders. Why do you disagree with the analysis that Henri made?
No, I don't really disagree. I think one of the huge drivers of your success is the business model you pick initially, and obviously you can pivot to some extent over time and focus on different customer segments, but you can only deviate so much from the initial business model. So that's why I like to help on the ideation phase. But I think what is very important, and that's also learning from my past, is that the founders, they really need to be passionate about the idea, and that is only possible if the founder to some extent comes up with the idea, him or herself, with your guidance and help.
Okay. Anton, you said you changed your business model. May it be one part of it that basically what Christian is planning to do 1 or 2 ventures a year with his limited resource, that you cannot multiply that. It's not scalable to the extent, and then basically with the number of investments you're doing and also the amount of capital that you need to employ, that old model was not sustainable.
No, you mean the company building model was not sustainable? No, that's not true. I think the reason why we changed it, and change always sounds so radical, because we didn't really change it. We kind of, I would say, smoothly pivoted into a different direction. Although from the very beginning until now, like the main idea was always to back founders. The question is only who are the founders, or which founders, and how to. And we started as a company builder, mainly as a hybrid model, company building and basically seed investing. And we have clearly moved into that VC direction, as I just mentioned, over the last 5-10 years, meaning that we don't, only in exceptional cases, co-found companies, build companies, but actually invest in existing founders. And why is that? Because I think this is really and as you said, it's a reflection of a stronger maturity in the ecosystem. We believe that that over the last 5-10 years, the ecosystem has matured immensely. Like 5-10 years ago, we had a lot of great execution talent here in Berlin. We had people, smart people that wanted to do something, but there wasn't a lot of know-how, experience, and maybe and also not the infrastructure in terms of funding here in Berlin back then. So I guess there were like the Rocket Internets of this world, also Project A, you guys were needed, I guess, in a different way as a helping hand to actually take those execution talents and help them build a platform and execute on that. Today, I think it's a little different. Today, we see second, third generation of founders. We see people who have started working with Zalando, who have started companies with Rocket, who are building their second or third company. So it's a totally different game. They have the experience. We also have technological tools which are much easier to access. You don't need to have like somebody else who kind of provides you with a platform. You have the cloud, you have everything. You can just like start, go out and build. And you have much more capital flying around in this city. You have a very sophisticated business angel scene that has a lot of experience and know-how. So altogether, this has led to, in our eyes, to the fact that the best, or at least we find the best founders are the ones that actually go out and build the companies themselves. And then we go there and help them, I don't know, 1 or 2 years later and act as a typical VC who invests in founder-led companies. So that is our reflection, that is our observation, and this is why we did that. But of course, there's always like also for us, there's exceptions of the rule, and there's different views on that. But this is how we basically why we adapted the model away from company building towards more on the investing side, and then support the companies with our operational forces.
Okay. Eckhardt, in some certain cases, I think you mainly might agree, which we will hear now, but in some cases you still decide to be a company builder. Well, what would be typical cases for that, and maybe you have an example?
Sure. So I guess, yeah, I completely can actually relate to almost everything, except for maybe the best founders are the ones that maybe build their companies on their own. Because I think the definition of best founders then is very limited. I think like those founders that really just build everything up from scratch on their own are there, but they are just, I think, only a certain number of business models where that exactly works, and the risk, of course, is usually a little bit higher. So I think for us, we see it differently in the businesses, especially in the industries that we work in, that they're sometimes the best founder for a certain topic, for a certain business model, and with the hurdles and challenges in that area, are actually the ones that work together as a team, and maybe part of that team are we, because we basically can provide some support that even the best, smartest, and really most experienced serial entrepreneurs in Berlin maybe wouldn't be able to do, because there are so many like minor topics that it's hard to look after. And there I would say, yeah, that's in the end a decision. It's a trade, because of course you can say we do it as a team of 3 and start it together, and then 1 or 2 years later get your money and then basically progress from there. Or we decide, well, we get someone on board like us. We of course give away a certain amount of equity for that. But we get a support, and maybe we get a quick start, maybe get a head start on other people out there in this industry. And I think everybody on our side, but also on the entrepreneur side, has really to look at what he wants to do, what he wants to be in charge of. And sometimes I think we are also still, as a company builder or in any form we have up here, can be perfect partners, but not for everyone and not in every business model.
I would agree with this regarding the best founders. So our first big exit was a company called Quandu. We did this prior to B10, but with a similar model, Daniel and myself individually. And the Quandu founders came from Rocket, actually, Philip and Daniel. They built up City Deal, sold it for over 100 million, I believe. And so they knew how to execute, but they needed some support because they wanted to build a mobile-based system. So it was about technology, design, and product, where they did not have that much experience. And the good thing was, when we met them, we were able to talk with them on eye level. So we supported them in those areas, whereas, sorry, but an international rollout, conquering 13 countries in 24 months and being market leader in 7 of them, we did almost nothing there because they knew how to do it. But they needed some support initially in some areas where they were not as strong at that point in time. And they were smart enough to know what they could do very well and where they needed some support. And these are the kind of founders we look for. Founders that are super good in certain areas, but they understand in which areas they could possibly need some support from our side.
What year was that? What year was that?
2012.
Yeah, that proves your point. Yeah.
Saying,
As this is an event for founders, and I assume many of you are founders, there's always a discussion in venture capitalists. Do you build hypotheses after which you invest, or are you opportunity driven? And that means a lot for the founders, because if a VC has a hypothesis, the VC is looking for you. If it's opportunity driven, you go to the VC. I know that none of you have a clear model on that, but I would like to touch on that a little bit. Maybe Christian, you want to start?
Yeah, I think it's not a question of either or, but it's both. And then the question is, what do you like more? And as I mentioned, I have my list of ideas I would ideally want to build with someone, but then I obviously stay opportunistic. And I mean, this list of ideas, it's fluid over time. So I would say I have my hypotheses, and then I'm waiting until I find the right founder, but then I'm also open to increase my list of hypotheses.
What are just a couple of them that you can already share with us?
I think if you look at, for example, direct-to-consumer e-commerce, you have an intense explosion of the number of micro-brands being created, like Casper, Warby Parker, Dollar Shave Club being the first movers. But then if you look at all the universe of FMCG brands, I think there are a number of products which some have been tried, some haven't been tried, but there are like a lot of gaps where like you can build a new FMCG company and bring it to a sizable business.
Henri, if I look at your portfolio, do you have a hypothesis?
No, not really. So we have some criteria, and all of the portfolio companies match these criteria. So we only invest in Berlin-based companies because we like the proximity to our portfolio companies. So we believe if they are in Stuttgart or in London or somewhere else, we couldn't do any operational support because we don't fly to London on a daily basis. So that's not possible. Most of them even sit together with us in the same office building because we like a company called Andreessen Horowitz in the US, and they do investments in a 1-hour flight radius around San Francisco. And for us, it's ideally if it's 1 minute walking distance to the desk of the founder and talk to them. Yeah? So, but we like B2B models more. But we did, I don't know, automotive, so car sharing was one. We did something in logistics, 2 things actually. We did something in autonomous driving. We did something in legal tech now, and 1 healthcare investment. So is this one area only? No. But if you see an idea and we believe in the potential, we do it. I mean, we don't have to ask other people. That's a good thing. So there's not a big premium or something that you have to ask. It's quick decisions. And if the 2 of us, Danny and myself, believe in the idea, we are happy to put in our money.
Yeah, you mentioned healthcare. So you would call Eckhardt if you got some regulation questions on that.
Maybe.
Happy to help.
And would you pick up the phone?
Yeah, always.
Maybe, because I read that you recently also did some straight equity investments. So maybe that's something, of course. Yeah. So we're typically doing the super early phase where product market fit is not completely achieved. With our money, we try to bring the companies to a certain stage that are then investable for, let's say, seed, Series A investors. Depends on the speed of the company. And then we're more than happy to talk to you, of course. Yeah.
And I always will pick up the phone.
So Anton, do you have any hypotheses, or is it just with that much capital to deploy, you just have to be flexible?
Yes, in a sense. We also look pretty broad. So there's some things we don't really like gaming, for example, or if it's too hardware heavy, then we don't really look at it. But normally we look at pretty much everything that has a digital, scalable business model behind it. But we always get temporarily interested in certain industries, technologies, business models, and then we do what we call deep dives. Normally, those are industry deep dives, and it's a little bit comparable to yours. I think you do it even more dedicated than us, but we do, for example, then digital health deep dives, and this is where we kind of go down into the topic where we actually start talking to industry experts, to professors, to other funds that are specialized on that, screen our databases for these kind of companies to actually find proactively companies in that space rather than companies coming to us. And we've been doing that also with health in 2016, 2017. I've been doing 3 investments in that space, all of them outside of Germany, or that are mainly operating outside of Germany because of regulations. We've done that recently with mobility, where we've done 2 investments. We've done that last year with education, where we've done 2 investments. So it can be kind of fields that already feel kind of picked over already, like education. I mean, there have been education ups and downs in tech for forever. And then there can be hot topics such as health or mobility that we jump on. That's basically the idea. It's like a T. We basically do look pretty opportunity-driven to everything that comes in, and then we go deep into things that we find more interesting than others.
Eckhardt.
Yeah, I would actually substitute, I think, hypotheses with strategy. And our strategy, I think, is we have a very clear strategy, and that was a decision last year to move into healthcare. But for the first now, roughly not even a year, we were very opportunistically because the market is so broad, so much actually to go after. We decided to be a little bit more opportunistically, but now we are narrowing it down to focus areas where we believe now we build up expert knowledge and then basically can build up more startups or support our startups better. So I would say also, as we heard in the beginning, it's a little bit of a mixture, but I think you should have a high strategy, be it a T or whatever, and then basically sometimes you have to be opportunistically because the world is changing so fast that sometimes just stuff comes along and you have to see that actually might fit really well into my strategy.
Okay. We mentioned that the Berlin startup ecosystem over the last 5-10 years needed companies like HitFox, Rocket, Building 10, and Project A to actually create the founders. Now, all these strategies, of course, are like 1-2 years forwards oriented, but where do you think we will stand in 5 years? What new ideas or new concepts will emerge that basically you have to get ready for already? And I'm not talking about investment arenas, but kind of your own business model. So the most recent business model, Christian, you have, right? So you just started it right now. So what's your business model?
No, I think so. What I'm starting now, it's probably similar to what like Rocket or Project A has started a few years ago, or like 10 years ago. And I mean, what happened with these companies is that they all turned into VCs as they tried to scale the business because the incubation didn't work anymore. When you try to incubate 10 or 20 companies every year. So I think like either, I mean, there are two routes and it's very early, but either I just keep focused on building like very good companies in a small number each year. Or I mean, I go into the VC model, but I mean, since I really like building companies, I would probably just say, if you build 2-3 very good companies every year, it's very good and it will not change much. I think what will change is the industries. So you always have new waves in technology and these technologies enable you to capture new opportunities. I think right now blockchain is also very interesting. So the focus on the industry will shift, similar to what Hitfox is doing with their strategy. And I think also, I mean, we have been in a 10-year bull market. The economy has been booming. So over the next 5 years, I would not be surprised to see a correction. And then probably the funding environment will also change. And I think there will be a focus on more lean business models, perhaps.
Okay, Eckhardt, where will Hitfox stand 10 years from now?
Well, 10 years.
What will the business model be?
I think like if I thought quickly about the business model, and I think as we've been in fintech for 4 years, and I think we've seen a little bit what we saw maybe in e-commerce the last 10 years. So the people have grown, they have experienced more. I think in Finleap we've, acquired, I don't know if you say acquired there, but got licenses from BaFin, etc. Like, I don't know, 5 or 10 probably now even. And banking license back then, I remember like talking to lawyers was, yeah, of course we can help you, but have you done it? No, never. I think it's not a commodity yet, but I think stuff that really like made us special because we had experience in a certain area is maybe not so special anymore after a while. Then there's of course the hype over a little bit of certain areas of technology. So I think we will have to maybe look at a new industry where there's a way for digitization and where we can really be of support. And if not, then we will, in the long term, of course, also have to pivot maybe more into investing or just basically taking care of the portfolio we have. But yeah, that is a couple of years to come, I would say.
Henri, how is the business model of VCs changing? Well, what's your vision? Where will it go?
So it's a little bit of the things that the both of you just said. So first of all, I believe in smaller VCs. So there's actually also data about this, that smaller VCs deliver in % higher returns than larger VCs out there. So and this is the reason why successful small VCs then raise at some point in time large amounts of capital and become sometimes less successful. We try not to fall into this trap, so we would like to stay in this small model, first one. Second trend is, we see this now in our company. Maybe in the next phase, it's good to focus only on one topic. I mean, Rocket did this in the early years with e-commerce. They were the best e-commerce player out there for sure. And you guys are also doing this, yeah, with the edge tech business in Hitfox first, then with Finleap and FinTech, and now with Heartbeat in the healthcare segment. And this, of course, helps you to provide even better operational services because you are also having some industry expertise that you could provide there. So it's a combination small funds. Then it's only one topic, maybe only one industry. And I also believe that it's beneficiary if the VCs are led by former founders. So if it's not only former bankers and consultants, but people who founded companies themselves before and sat on the other side of the table and now know how it is to build a company.
Anton, if Henri is right, Project A will not survive. But I think you
Not
have some
survive?
ideas. You've got some ideas that help you survive.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
I guess that's
new
our
areas
destiny
of
if Henri
business. Yeah.
says that. I think. In
I'm
fact,
not
it's
saying
gonna
this,
be
he says that.
there is. I agree. I mean, I think growing funds by all means. We don't believe in that at all. We have grown our fund, but we also understand that there is a limit. Also, as long, especially here in Europe, as we're focused on Europe, and as the exit environment and the later stage funding is still not as it should be. This is why we are also very careful in terms of growth of the funds. Where will we stand in 5 years? I couldn't agree more with you that this very much also depends on the macroeconomic situation. I mean, in a way, venture capital is a bit of kind of the last appendix of capitalism, and it only works. That industry only works if the overall economy works well, because I mean we get money from investors who that's normally leftover money that they put in like hardcore innovation, and they wouldn't do that if they were tight. So I think that is one of the and again. And of course, like if we kind of suffer from an economic downturn, the whole digital scene will, but it will go up again. So I think that is going to be interesting. And then, how will we develop? We will probably stay. If we keep on investing in seed Series A companies, we will probably stay the same fund sizes at the moment. And then, but there is also an opportunity because there is a clear gap of funds that actually can also write a 10, 20 million ticket in Germany. Maybe we are the ones who raise that larger fund one day and write these checks. So we will see.
The most important question for everybody here in the room is always, when should they contact you and how should they contact you? Should they wait outside and grab the business card and say, hey, my name is whatever, and Henri, please listen to me? Or what's the best way to approach you to get in contact with you? Maybe Jonas.
Yeah, I think we talked about the best founders. Maybe let's call them the successful founders. They will be successfully able to contact us. So I'd say either approach us here or find a warm intro. Often, of course, helps. If you know someone that we know, maybe get in contact with us. But I think there's always a way. We are in Berlin. We are often also on panels or give speeches. So there's always a way. Approach us early. We're open for that. And as you mentioned, yeah, we're not only building, we're also just investing, just providing capital, of course, providing then support if needed as well. So yeah, just you'll find a way. I would put it like that.
So I think there's maybe a bit of a difference between us two because we, as I said, we invest a little later. So we very much rely on our angel network, on our business angel network, and I always give the advice to find in the early stages when you have started a company, be it through your platforms or be it through the network, find a good business angel that ideally also invests in you. And then and has a good network, because for us, and it always sounds so harsh when you say, yeah, a warm intro makes sense, and some people just don't get it. Why, if I have a great company, why do I need this warm intro? Why do I need to go this detour? But for us, it's we see overall we screen 2,000 companies a year, so they come like on the top of the funnel, and the warmer that intro gets, the clearer it is that that person goes around that 2,000 companies and already gets into this kind of pre-selected 100 or 200 companies. And then we just simply, I mean, it is as it is. We just have a different look at these companies as if they come in coldly. So it's just very helpful, apart from the fact that business angels are a very helpful resource to build your company, to give you advice at the right time. It is just a very helpful resource to get in touch with the right investors at the right time, because the business angels have done that several times.
Okay, Christian.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I would suggest people to get in contact as early as possible, and I'm generally very approachable on like conferences like these or LinkedIn or via email. Just would say that if you cannot write a compelling email or LinkedIn message, I will probably also not work with you. That's the reality. So if you cannot grab my attention there, then yeah, I mean, that's fate. But and maybe sometimes I'm wrong, but I would say approach me as early as possible when you know, okay, I want to create a company, and then I mean we can always see if there's something we can do together.
So for us, the earlier the better as well. So half of the companies we founded together at the notary, so we even met them pre-founding the company. But 100% of the company we invested in were introduced to us by friends or business partners or some people we know. So the same, like all of you mentioned before, find somebody who knows us that also knows you, and get an introduction from this person. Still, we need, of course, a compelling message. So what's the idea in a nutshell? So we have to get it. So writing more is not meaning that we understand it better. Actually write less and make it crystal clear what it is. That helps us. We are only investors. We are not the experts in your area.
Okay. I just received the 5-minute warning. So as at the place we have many international delegations, and it's always about promoting Berlin. So some of you guys might think to whether we should go to Tel Aviv or to Silicon Valley or Berlin, why we should stay here. And I would love to have your guys' opinion on why Berlin is the spot, and how the development of Berlin is going in comparison to other major startup hubs in Europe. Because I think Silicon Valley, we all agree, is way too far already. Maybe, Henri, you want to start and then we go backwards.
Sure. I mean, for us, it's crystal clear. We're in Berlin. We only do investments in Berlin because we want to be nearby. So for us, only Berlin obviously makes sense. We see there's a trend from, of course, talent coming to the city. Because recently it was rather cheap to live here. It's increasing lately a bit. That makes it maybe a little bit more difficult. And also the, let's say, infrastructure in terms of flying is not the ideal one, with an incomplete airport and an airline that recently went bankrupt. So, but still, it's an attractive place to live from a cultural perspective, very international here. And of course, there are ecosystems that are more developed, but we see that Berlin is growing massively. And we think it's also something that investors recently realized, and more investors will also come to the city, and then the spiral goes upward.
Yeah, so I generally agree very much with what you said. So if you want to add operational value, the founders need to be close. So I also get approached by people from London or Southeast Asia, but I think it just doesn't make sense, and I cannot deliver on my promise to add value if there is such a large distance. So I primarily want to work with founders in Berlin or at least in Germany.
We think Berlin is great. Berlin is a great place, but we don't really care where you are. At least, I mean, we focus on Europe, but we have also invested in the US. We were just about to do an investment in Africa, actually, but the focus is clearly Europe. Berlin is a great place, but I would always pick the place where you have your network, where you know people that can actually that you can leverage to get a better or get a head start rather than any other ecosystem. So for us, it's like we invest all over Europe, and kind of the EasyJets of this world are becoming more and more our offices, because especially recently, and I don't want to bash Berlin as an ecosystem, but especially recently, in the last 6 months, we have not seen so many companies here. So we are definitely looking outside of Berlin and outside of Germany even more.
Yeah, we also have foreign investments, but I would say like we are a Berlin company. We focus on the German or European market at the moment, and I would say yes, maybe there has been some change, but overall, I would say as a founder, you do your due diligence and what do you need for your startup, and I'd say you still get everything in Berlin, and the overall scene has really matured over the last 10 years. You especially have capital and a great angel network, so I think you definitely can find the right resources to start something great here, and the cost of living, I think, is still acceptable. It's not cheap anymore, maybe, but acceptable.
Yeah, it's not politically correct to say Berlin is cheap, but if you take Paris or London or Barcelona, it costs double. So basically, if you raise $1 million, you create double the value in Berlin, and that should be a reason that you stay in Berlin and create the value here. So that's my promotion speech for Berlin. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.